Thank you very much, Patrick, and hopefully you can monitor the time for this presentation for the next 20-25 minutes, because I have a habit for speaking for 2-3 hours without interruption on emerging payments. So hopefully you'll interrupt me if I just go overboard here. My name is Zafar. I'm a partner in Edgar, Dunn and Company, which is financial services consulting company with focus on payments. Originally out of San Francisco in the 1970s, we now have several offices around the world. So in the next 20-25 minutes, as I said, I'm going to talk about digital commerce with a focus on payments, so digital payments. And we're going to explore, basically, because we don't have much time, we're going to explore 3 key areas, 3 challenges that we call. And these are probably not new news to you, but hopefully we can discuss it in a newer context, or discuss it in the context of new players in the payments area. So throughout the presentation, we'll come across 3 key challenges which the digital payments industry, the key players, have to encounter and overcome if they have to succeed over the next 5 or 10 years. Okay. So I'll just start from the very beginning, just some basics slides. If I can move the cursor. Here we go.
This one.
This one?
This one.
Okay, just this one. The only one that I hadn't.
The plug is here.
Can you do it?
I can do this. I can do it from here.
Oh, you did it? Oh, did I? You just, okay. Talking about connectivity in the world. So, so from the first computers, I don't know if I'm old enough to remember these first computers when we used to use the 5 1/4 inch disk. And then there was a big revolution of 3 1/2 inch diskette, which was hard enough not to bend, and you could put it in your pocket. And we thought that was really a revolution. Where could we go from here? And then, of course, the mobile phones made an appearance in the late 80s and the early 90s, which are not really mobile phones, but they could only be used by specialized professionals, people who worked in mines in different places, or very rich people, or even drug smugglers. So satellite-connected phones. Is it going on its own? Yeah. That's making me keep pace with my. Some of those I'll have to stop, because I'm going to stop at some of those slides. This is a good way to make presenters keep on time, you know. It's yeah. So the next one we go. And the early websites, if you remember, the early websites were absolute basic text stuff and a few graphics. So after all that, after 20 years, what I would say is we really arrived at the beginning on the next slide, that we have seen for the first time really the 2 key technologies of our time. Computing and communications have come together in these little computers that connect, communicate, and compute all together, which we call smartphones. And in the future, things will be driven by apps, televisions, all sorts of things by apps, or something which we can't imagine now, but which will replace the apps that we use today. So all this has given rise to connected communities. And yep, I think there's a build in a few slides. So connected communities, basically what internet has done is brought fragmented communities together. So the first one was eBay, where people couldn't buy and sell to each other directly. You had to look at catalogs, you had to use the phone. But what internet and what eBay did early was to bring fragmented communities of buyers and sellers of initially all sorts of unique stuff, which would be difficult to, you know, if I'm selling some strange Civil War antiques, it was difficult for me to find buyers for the stuff I was selling. And that's what eBay did, was bring them all together. And then PayPal facilitated payments between these people. Previously, they had to wait for checks to clear. And now today, we can go to the next slide. And now today we're talking about connected objects, as you heard all day yesterday, with connected objects and connected personal items. So the Google Glass, which had become really not popular, but everybody knew about it. In fact, a lot of conferences that you used to go to, there'll be people just wearing Google Glass and just showing off. And they would just, it was because you could, you know, your vision wasn't 100%, so they'd be walking almost like this, you know, but they had to wear the Google Glass. And somebody invented a word for this. They were called them glass holes. I don't repeat this, but for showing off. But the key thing is that it did not succeed initially because there are lots of challenges for wearables to succeed because the battery power wasn't there. Within half an hour, the battery was gone. But they were experimenting with payments. A lot of companies actually did payment apps for Google Glass. Basically, you look at this, you look at the barcode, and you say something like "grab it," and the barcode would be captured, and then you say "pay," and then you would, you know, automatically it would pay. Or you could actually just blink. You look at the barcode and blink, and they would detect the, you know. But it hasn't succeeded because if you really have to charge it after every half an hour, it's not very good for mobility purposes. Then we have the watch, of course, which I think has a great promise, but for me, perhaps not so much for payments. I don't know about you, but you know, if you have an expensive watch, I wouldn't like to be just, you know, tapping it all the time. But if you have a Bluetooth headset like Beats, and it's connected to your watch, and all your music goes on your watch, you'll be able to run in the park just with your watch and your headset. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. And then, of course, Nest, which Google bought. Now, Google Glass has been transferred to Nest, which is a company for home appliances that Google bought. And, of course, connected clothes, you know, connected vests and clothes, which will keep track of, you know, your vital signs and everything. And if you're missing your loved one, you can actually also give a remote hug to your loved one. Actually, the suit does contract. It's like giving a hug. It's like poking or hugging, you know, it'll be a real physical manifestation. Now, what does all that mean for payment? So I think when all this connectivity takes place, the first challenge for payments really, we can move to the next slide, the first challenge really is security. And if you look at, there are loads of different types of security biometrics that have been talked about. Of course, the fingerprint on the Apple iPhone and other devices is being used right now. But we are talking about facial recognition. We're also talking about voice. Apparently, your voice DNA is very, very unique as the thumbprint, and it's 99.99% accurate. And they're actually using it in developing markets where people are calling in to claim insurances for people who died 20 years ago. So they ask them to say something or speak something. So if the voice matches, then your payment is released. And then, of course, the heartbeat, and there are many others. I've just put three here. The heartbeat, which is basically everybody has a unique rhythm of their heartbeat. So I always say to my wife that she'll have to calm down before she picks up an object, and she can make a payment, because they'll have to check her heartbeat if that works or not. And linked to this is the retailer security. So it's not just the consumer who is conscious about security, but retailers. All these three retailers have one thing in common, that they were hacked. And when you hacked, all your credit card or information is stolen. People can be, there are professional websites where people sell credit card numbers in bulk, that you can go and buy stolen credit card numbers. You get bulk discounts. I mean, you know, so it's becoming very, very professional. So that's, from my perspective, for digital commerce to succeed, for an individual new payment startup to succeed, you have to really ensure that the security perception, of security with consumers is strong. And for retailers, they have to make sure that their systems are hack-proof. It's very difficult to have it 100%. Every company is breached to some extent. but as far as possible. We have to make sure that we don't do security so strong, like in some British banks, that you can't even get into the service. You know, you have to keep on asking them for new passwords and that type of stuff. So digital innovation really is fueling innovation in payments. So because payments have to keep up with new ways of interacting with customers on the internet, there has been a massive amount of innovation in digital payments. I mean, we didn't know what Facebook was. When somebody told me in our office, a junior consultant said, "Have you seen Facebook? That's brilliant." I said, "I don't need Facebook. I have LinkedIn. What do I need it for?" It was difficult for me to imagine even how Facebook would be so essential for everyone. And then now we're talking about social commerce, how all these sites can actually monetize this interaction between different people. So social commerce needs payments for it to be implemented. And therefore, all these innovations are creating new payment methods for us to go forward. There has been an explosion in new payment devices. First, this happened when the internet really started back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. There were all sorts of new payment methods like flues and beans, which were going to disintermediate everybody. And now with the revolution of mobile telephony and mobile commerce and social commerce, there is suddenly another spate of startups and new companies that are coming up. 90% of these will not succeed. But it will be interesting to see which are the ones that get it right. And those ones that get it right, I believe, are the ones that can handle those three challenges that we will go through this presentation with. So let's quickly take a look at what these guys are doing, all these new payment companies. It's very important that all these companies, 99% of the new startups, all new payment innovations, are not trying to create a totally new payment infrastructure. They want to use what's available. So when there is an interaction between merchant and consumer, the consumer buys something from the merchant and then has to pay the merchant. There are only two underlying payment methods that can be used anywhere. We're talking about retail payments. So the first one is the card payment system. So you can make a payment to a retailer using a card, a debit card, a credit card, or a prepaid card, whichever it is. So these are what we call like the two train tracks. This is one track, which is the card payment system. And the second one is the ACH payment system, which is the automated clearinghouse. These are bank-to-bank transfers. These are the transfers that are made using SWIFT as a messaging service, and then the banking networks that are used. Sorry, we can go back. So the two very different payment rails on very different philosophies. This one, there is no authorization. The retailer has no authorization in terms of whether the consumer has money or a guarantee that the retailer will be paid. Whereas in the card system, there is a guarantee to the retailer that you will be paid. That's a big difference. Here, the retailer has to take a chance, like a check, hoping that the customer would have funds in their account. However, innovations in this area, like by PayPal and a few others, have given a sort of a guarantee and an instant settlement. There are these ACH companies are now, have rolled out some of them, instant bank transfers, like in the UK Faster Payments. The payment takes place in 15 minutes. So the merchant can actually get money in their bank account within 15 minutes. In the US, they're working on same-day clearing, which means at least the same day. You can take a risk, but only just for the same day. In China, it's instantaneous. So basically, the merchant you pay using your bank account, the merchant gets it immediately. Why would you pay 2% on credit cards? So that's the idea of this system. But credit card companies do another great thing, which ACH doesn't do as yet. In ACH payments, the payment is non-reversible. If it's gone, it's gone. I'll have to go to the merchants and say, please give it back to me. Whereas in card, if you made it an error or if there is a fraud, you have a recourse, which are called chargebacks, in which you can get the payment back. Anyway, the point I'm saying is that this is the infrastructure. And if we go to the next slide, this is the infrastructure in which all these new guys are making a play for themselves. So the disruption that is happening is between the infrastructure providers, who would hate to be called the infrastructure providers because banks have a direct contact with the consumer. But the danger is that these new guys are going to become the providers of services to consumers, and the old guys are going to become infrastructure providers. Anyway, so that was just the mechanics of how this evolution is taking place. So based on all this, the second challenge that, in my mind, that the payment industry has is really critical mass whenever a new payment innovation comes up. Now, easier said than done. We talk about, oh, what a brilliant new payment method somebody has thought of. What a great new technology. What a clever way of doing things. But the key thing is we don't know what the magic formula is. Some companies come up with brilliant formulas, brilliant services, yet they don't succeed. Because it's not just the formula, it's the execution. That's very, very important. So very few companies in the history of payments have been able to reach critical mass in payment transactions. Of course, we know it's the card companies, Visa and MasterCard, and PayPal, Alipay, Western Union in a different way. These are the companies that have reached critical mass on a global scale. And remember, payments is a scale business. So scale is very important. So these guys have reached scale globally. And at the next level, we have companies which have reached scale, but on a regional level. So you've got the likes of Ideal in the Netherlands, you've got like GiroPay in Germany, you've got Klarna in Sweden, you've got M-Pesa in Kenya and Tanzania, who have become extraordinarily successful. But either in their own market or in the region that they are successful in. Ideal is as I said, it's present only in the Netherlands, and I believe they have 55 or 60% of all internet volumes. Zoom was a company that was created in, I think, 2006 or 7 to focus on remittances. Remittances is the toughest market to get into. And it has very high margins. So everybody wants to get into it who's not in it. And people who are in it, they want to get out of it. Because it's a tough market and there are high risks of money laundering. The Zoom guys created this company in 2006 or 7, and they sold it for $1 billion to PayPal this year. Amazing what they did. We don't have time to go into the mechanics of each of these companies, why they became successful. But the key thing is they were able to find a need and find stakeholders who were able to provide incentives and value to customers and merchants. Then we have, I will skip the third layer right now, I'll go to the fourth layer. Then we have the companies that are extinct or on life support. So you had, as I said, Beans and Flues, OboPay. Anybody remembers OboPay? Nokia invested $70 million in OboPay back in 2009. It's gone. Weave was a mobile operator payments company in the UK. That's gone. So this actually I could, sorry?
We have Byster in France.
Yeah, Byster is some of them as we speak have sort of, yes. And Quickso as well? Quickso as well, right? So some of the companies are already trickling down to the fourth layer. So that's what you do. You start dropping from here. There are other companies like in France that have just started on P2P and stuff. So P2P has made P2P has historically failed. But now with the mobile phone, it has come back again with Barclays Pinget, with Swish in Sweden, with Swip in Denmark. Although Quick Quixo in France did not succeed, but there is a renewed interest that people will do P2P payments through a mobile phone because we are far more familiar now with using our devices for several things as we were before.
Google Wallet is announced.
Yeah, exactly. So interestingly, now a lot of people have two Google Wallets on their phones. The old Google Wallet and the new Google Wallet. The new Google Wallet does something else than the old Google Wallet. Now they have Android Pay to make things very clear for you. Now you have three things. So now Android Pay is focusing on tap and pay transactions, and Google Wallet is more P2P transactions. And like Apple Pay, in Android Wallet, it'll be using your just using your camera to get your picture of your card and get it onto the cloud. The whole idea about using a secure element and NFC, using a secure element, bye-bye. You know, that happened 5 years ago, and the industry didn't move because of that. And then, of course, everybody talks about Bitcoin. I can certainly say that that's an emerging payment instrument. It's doubtful whether it's even a payment instrument because right now it's behaving as a commodity in terms of that people are buying and speculating with it. That's the very reason why people are buying it, or they are buying it because they have to pay certain type of vendors and retailers who are not on the open World Wide Web, who used to be on a website called the Silk Road before. What's interesting is I'm a big believer in virtual currencies. Now, whether Bitcoin is the one that's going to be the dominant, we don't know. It may be something else. It may be something else. Now what people are saying, well, Bitcoin, it didn't really succeed. But hey, it's the blockchain that's going to change things, you know, around. So yes, blockchain has many features and stuff, but I believe in virtual currencies, and whether it's a blockchain or it's the Bitcoin or it's some other derivation of these ideas, we don't know as yet. So I'll quickly go through this because we still have a few slides to go. Basically, there are two types of virtual currencies. You got these virtual currencies that are centrally managed, like the mint chip, which is, by the way, gone. It was a Canadian mint. But these are the currencies that are issued centrally. Whereas the key difference in Bitcoin is that it's a virtual currency that is not issued by a central authority like a central bank. And there's a certain type of libertarian people who really think that's going to be the key thing going forward. And then another thing that's happening is a lot of the big countries are developing their own payment systems. They're developing their own new brands. So India has developed RuPay, Brazil has ELO, China has UnionPay, Russia is developing its own, Turkey is developing its own. We are working with the Turkish company which is developing this new Turkish payment brand for local payments. So that was challenge 2. I've got only 1 minute left probably, so I'll just spend that last minute on the challenge 3, and this will be the last slide. So the third challenge is the payment margins. Payment margins are really, really decreasing. And there are two things that are contributing to, that are driving that. One is that there are, of course, lots of players, lots of competitors, so therefore margins are going down, increasing competition, but increasingly the regulators are becoming very active in the payment space. And the new interchange regulations, for example, in Europe, interchange used to be in many countries as high as 2% or 1.8%. And now the regulator in Brussels has said, I don't want to listen to you guys. I think you guys are getting together and you're forming sort of a cartel of payment providers. So I am going to actually tell you what your interchange rate is going to be. And that interchange rate they have reduced to 0.2 and 0.3%, 0.3 for cards, credit cards, 0.2 for debit cards. And therefore, the margins in payments are really very, very small. So banks and other payment providers would have to really think that I can't really finance my new innovation just from processing payments. But what I'll have to do is think of new things to generate value-added services that the merchants will be able to buy from me, or value-added services which the consumers will be able to buy from me. And that's the only way I'll be able to fund my innovation going forward. So that's my presentation. Thank you for moving the slides. Apologize for this. So thank you very much.